Ada Ogo really make me happy today. That girl Adalgo is too much. She is a comedian indeed. She
In a
really
small
is.
village where laughter echoed louder than the village bell, there lived a girl whose jokes could heal broken hearts. They called her Adago the comedian. Whenever sorrow visited Omokoro village, she chased it away with laughter. Weddings felt brighter because of her. Burials felt lighter because of her. Even elders forgot their worries when she spoke. To the villagers, Adago was a blessing, a living sunshine, a girl whose smile never faded. But what the village never knew was that the girl who made everyone laugh went home every night to a house where laughter was forbidden. Behind her jockeys were silent tears. Behind her cheerful voice was a lonely heart. And inside her own home, Adogo was not a star, she was just a girl struggling to survive. This is the story of hidden pain behind public happiness. The story of a girl loved by a village but forgotten in her own home. The story of Adago, the girl who made everyone laugh. Please, before the story begins, subscribe to this channel and like our video, comment, share to your loved ones. In the lively village of Omokoro, life moved with rhythm. Every morning, the sound of pencils hitting mortars echoed across compounds. Women shouted greetings across fences. Goats wandered freely like the owned the village. Children ran barefoot on dusty paths, chasing tires and singing playground songs. And inside that cheerful village, there lived one person everybody knew. Her name was Adalgo, but nobody called her by her real name. To the villagers, she was simply known as Adalgo the comedian. If laughter was food, Umokoro villagers would never go hungry because of her. It didn't matter whether the occasion was joyful or sorrowful. If Adalgo appeared, happiness followed her like shadow follows body. At weddings, she would stand beside the bride and whisper jokes that made the bride forget her nervousness. At burials, when crying became too heavy and suffocating, elders would whisper, "Call Adalgo. Let her ease hearts small." During village meetings, when arguments almost turned into fights, the chief would clear his throat and say, "Where is that girl? The one who talks truth and makes people laugh at the same time." And like magic, Adalgo would step forward. One afternoon, during the market day celebration, the village square was full. Palm wine sellers lined their pots beside roasted meat stands. Women balanced baskets of vegetables on their heads while bargaining loudly. Children climbed mango trees to get a better view of the entertainment happening in the open square. The village youth group had arranged performances, but everyone was waiting for only one person. Where is Adago? Has she come? She must perform today. The moment she entered the square, a loud cheer rose. Adago. She appeared wearing an oversized wrapper tied clumsily around her waist. pretending to work like the village chief after drinking too much palm wine. The crowd exploded into laughter immediately. She bent her back, puffed her chest proudly, and began speaking in a deep voice, imitating the chief. My people, I have called this meeting to discuss why my wife hides the best meat from my soup. The villagers screamed with laughter. Even the chief himself laughed so hard that he wiped tears from his eyes. Adelgo switched characters quickly. She bent low, adjusted her imaginary health tie, and began acting like the chief's wife. You this old man, if I put full meat, you will finish it before your visitors arrive. The crowd rolled on the ground laughing. Children gathered around her like bees around honey. Adelgo, imitate the stubborn goat. One child shouted. She dropped to all fours immediately, bleating loudly and jumping around, pretending to chew clothes hung on a line. Another child shouted, act like Mama Ijoma when she is fighting over tomatoes. Adelgo jumped up, placed hands on her waist, and started shouting dramatically, you think your tomatoes are made of gold? Reduce price or I will close this stall. The market women laughed so loudly that some had to hold their stomachs. Adelgo loved moments like that. Standing in front of people, hearing laughter rise like festival drums, watching sadness disappear from people's faces, even if it was just for a short time. And every time villagers praised her, she would bow deeply and say jokingly, if laughter is medicine, then Omokoro people are the healthiest villagers in this land. But as the sun began to set that evening, the market slowly closed. Traders packed their goods, women tied babies to their backs and returned home. The noise faded gradually. Adelgo waved cheerfully to everyone. Good night, my people. Tomorrow I will bring fresh madness for you. The villagers laughed again as she walked away. But the moment she reached the lonely footpath leading to her father's compound, something changed. Her shoulders dropped. The playful bounce in her steps disappeared. Her smile slowly faded like chalk washed away by rain. Adelgo's compound stood at the far end of the village, surrounded by old mud walls and a rusted zinc roof that made loud noise anytime wind blew. Before she even entered the compound, she could already hear the sharp voice of her stepmother, Mama Nkiru, shouting from inside. Where is that useless girl? The sun is already sleeping and she is still roaming around. Adelgo stopped briefly at the entrance. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath like someone preparing to enter a battlefield. Then she stepped inside quietly. Mama Nkiru stood in the middle of the compound with arms folded tightly across her chest, her face twisted with anger. So you finally remembered you have a home, she snapped. Adelgo lowered her head respectfully. I am sorry, Mama. The villagers asked me to perform. Before she could finish speaking, Mama Nkiru interrupted harshly. Perform. perform? Do they feed you there? Do they wash your clothes? Do they fetch water for this house? Adelgo remained silent. From the corner of the compound, her father sat on a wooden stool repairing a fishing net. He did not raise his head. He did not speak. His silence cut deeper than any insult. Mama Nkiru pointed toward the kitchen area. Go and prepare food. And after that, fetch water. The pots are empty. Adago nodded quickly and rushed inside. As she prepared dinner, smoke from the firewood entered her eyes, mixing with the tears she struggled to hold back. Her hands moved fast, pounding yam, stirring soup, washing plates, but her mind was far away, still hearing the echo of villagers laughing happily. She wished, just once, that she could laugh like that inside her own home. That night, after serving everyone and finishing all chores, Adago lay on a thin mat inside her small room. Through the cracked wall, she could hear her stepmother laughing loudly while discussing village gossip with her father. Adago turned her face to the wall quietly. Tears rolled down her cheeks. The same girl who made the entire village laugh until their stomachs hurt could not remember the last time she truly smiled inside her own home. Outside, the moon shone brightly over Omokoro village. Inside one small room, Adago hugged herself tightly, whispering softly into the darkness, "One day, maybe, I will laugh for myself too." Morning always arrived early in Adago's father's compound. Long before the cock crowed, before the first rays of sunlight touched Omokoro village, Adago was already awake. The cold morning air wrapped around her thin body as she quietly folded her sleeping mat. She moved carefully, like someone afraid of stepping on invisible eggs. She knew one thing very well. If Mama Nkiru woke up before her, trouble would follow like thunder after lightning. Adago tied her faded wrapper firmly around her waist and picked up two large clay pots. Without making noise, she stepped outside and began walking toward the village stream. The path to the stream was long and lonely at that early hour. Dio rested gently on the grass, wetting her feet as she walked barefoot. Birds were just beginning their morning songs. Other girls her age were still sleeping comfortably inside their homes. Adago walked fast, balancing the empty pots skillfully on her head. She had mastered the act after years of practice. When she reached the stream, she knelt down and filled both pots carefully. The cold water numbed her fingers, but she ignored the discomfort. As she lifted the heavy pots onto her head, she whispered softly to herself, "Just finish everything early, maybe today will be peaceful." But deep inside her heart, she knew peace rarely visited her home. By the time she returned, Mama Nkiru was already standing in the compound, arms folded like someone waiting to catch a thief. "You are just coming back," Mama Nkiru shouted. Adago quickly lowered the pots. I am sorry, Mama. The stream was crowded. Mama Nkiru hissed loudly. Excuses, lazy girl. Go and light the fire. Your father will soon wake up. Adago rushed to the kitchen hut and began arranging firewood. Smoke rose into her face immediately, making her cough slightly. From inside the house, she could hear Mama Nkiru grumbling loudly. That girl thinks she is a celebrity because villagers clap for her. Let her try that nonsense here and see. Adago prepared breakfast quickly, hot pap and akara. She served her father first, kneeling respectfully beside him. Good morning, Papa, she said gently. Her father nodded without looking at her. He ate silently, his eyes fixed on the floor. Adago waited, hoping he would ask about her day or maybe even smile at her. He never did. Mama Nkiru collected her own food without saying thank you. Instead, she inspected the akara critically. Is this how you fry akara? It is too hard. Are you trying to break my teeth? I am sorry, Mama, Adago whispered. Mama Nkiru threw one piece back into the plate. After breakfast, go and weed the cassava farm. And don't come back until you finish everything. The cassava farm was far from the compound, under the hot sun that showed no mercy. Adago bent low, pulling stubborn weeds from the ground one by one. Sweat rolled down her face, soaking her wrapper completely. As she worked, she could hear distant laughter from the village square where children played. For a moment, she smiled faintly, remembering how she usually made those same children laugh. But quickly, she shook her head and focused on her work. She knew if she returned home late, punishment would be waiting. By afternoon, hunger twisted inside her stomach. Mama Nkiru rarely allowed her to eat until evening. Sometimes, leftovers were her only meal. Still, Adago continued working until her fingers became sore and her back ached badly. When she finally returned home, exhausted and dusty, Mama Nkiru was waiting again. You took too long, she snapped. I finished the farm work, Mama, Adago replied softly. Mama Nkiru inspected her suspiciously. You better not be lying. Evening chores began immediately. Adago washed clothes beside the well, scrubbed cooking pots, swept the entire compound, and prepared dinner again. As she worked, Mama Nkiru sat under the mango tree gossiping with neighbors, laughing loudly and freely. Each time Adago held her stepmother laugh, something inside her chest tightened painfully. It was strange. The woman who forbade laughter inside the house laughed loudly outside it. Later that night, something happened that wounded Adago deeply. As she washed the final plate, she remembered a funny story she had heard earlier in the village. Without thinking, she smiled slightly. Mama Nkiru noticed immediately. What is funny? She barked. Adago froze. Nothing, Mama, you are smiling like a foolish goat. Are you mocking me? Before Adago could respond, Mama Nkiru slapped her head across the face. The sound echoed sharply across the compound. Adago staggered backward, holding her cheek, tears burning her eyes. I am sorry, Mama, she whispered shakily. Next time I see you smiling without reason, I will deal with you properly. Mama Nkiru warned. Throughout the incident, Adago's father remained seated quietly, staring into darkness like he had seen nothing. That silence broke Adago's heart more than the slap. That night, after everyone had eaten and slept, Adago returned to her small room. The moonlight entered through the cracked wall, creating pale shadows around her. She sat on her mat slowly and touched her swollen cheek. Tears rolled down freely now. There was no reason to hide them anymore. She remembered the villagers cheering her name. She remembered children hugging her happily. Then she looked around her empty room. The difference felt like two separate worlds. In one world, she was Adago the comedian. In the other, she was just a girl nobody defended. She lay down quietly and hugged herself tightly, whispering into the silence, "Why is it easier to make strangers happy than to make your own family love you?" Outside, the wind blew gently across Omokoro village. Inside that small room, Adago cried until sleep finally carried her away. The New Yam Festival was the biggest celebration in Umokoro village. It was the one day every year when villagers forgot their worries and gathered to celebrate harvest, culture, and unity. Preparations started days before the festival. Women pounded yam in large mortars, their pestles rising and falling like music. The smell of fresh soup filled the air across compounds. Men decorated the village square with palm fronds and colorful fabrics. Young boys rehearsed masquerade dances while girls practiced cultural songs under the moonlight. Excitement moved through the village like wildfire. And just like every year, there was one question on everyone's lips. Adago will perform, Abi. Festival cannot be complete without her. 3 days before the festival, the village chief sent his messenger to Adago's compound. Mama Nkiru was seated outside sorting dry pepper when the messenger arrived. The chief invites Adago to perform during the New Yam Festival, the messenger announced proudly. Mama Nkiru narrowed her eyes suspiciously. What will she gain from it? She asked sharply. The chief said performers will receive gifts, yams, wrappers, and some money. Immediately, Mama Nkiru's expression softened. She called loudly, Adago, come here. Adago ran out quickly and knelt down. You will perform at the festival, Mama Nkiru said coldly. But listen well, don't disgrace this house. Yes, Mama, Adago replied quietly. Inside her heart, excitement and fear mixed together like storm clouds. The day of the festival finally arrived. The village square looked magical. Palm wine flowed freely. Drummers beat their instruments with powerful rhythm that made the ground vibrate. Smoke from roasted goat meat filled the air. Colorful rappers danced as women moved gracefully across the square. Children ran everywhere, shouting and laughing loudly. Masquerades appeared one after another, entertaining the crowd with dramatic dances and acrobatics. But everyone knew the final entertainment belonged to Adalgo. As evening approached, lanterns were lit around the square, casting golden light across smiling faces. The chief sat proudly on his decorated chair surrounded by elders. The youth leader stepped forward and raised his hand. Our people, the moment you have been waiting for has come. Let us welcome the daughter of laughter, Adalgo. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause. Adal stepped into the open arena wearing a bright wrapper borrowed from a neighbor. Beads decorated her neck, and white chalk designs were drawn lightly on her face. She bowed dramatically, causing the crowd to cheer louder. Inside her chest, her heart pounded like festival drums. But she forced her usual confident smile to appear. She began her performance. First, she imitated Okeke the palm wine tapper, who was known for secretly drinking half of the wine he was supposed to sell. She staggered around pretending to be drunk, scratching her head and speaking in a thick, slurred voice. My customers complain their wine is always small. Maybe the calabash is shrinking itself. The crowd exploded into laughter. Okeke himself laughed loudly, raising his cup in surrender. Next, she acted like the village chief's stubborn messenger who always exaggerated instructions. She puffed her chest and shouted dramatically. The chief said everyone must gather immediately, or the moon will refuse to rise tonight. The elders laughed so hard that some held their walking sticks for support. Children rolled on the ground laughing. But as Adago continued performing, something inside her chest started tightening slowly. Each time the crowd laughed, her mind drifted back to her home, her stepmother's insults, her father's silence, her lonely nights. Her jockeys became slightly slower. Her smile began trembling. She moved into her final performance, acting like a quarrelsome market woman arguing over fish prices. She placed hands on her waist and shouted, "Your fish is smelling like yesterday's rain. Reduce the price before I report you to the ancestors." The crowd laughed loudly again. But suddenly, Adago forgot her next line. She froze. The laughter continued for a few seconds before slowly fading as villagers noticed something was wrong. Adago stood in the center of the arena, staring at the crowd blankly. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Her eyes filled with tears she tried desperately to hold back. The entire square became quiet. Even the drummers stopped playing. No one had ever seen Ada go speechless before. She opened her mouth to speak again, but no words came out. Instead, a tear rolled down her cheek, then another. Her shoulders began shaking uncontrollably. The same girl who always made others laugh was now crying in front of the whole village. Whispers spread across the crowd. What is happening? Is she sick? Did someone offend her? The chief leaned forward with concern. The village women exchanged worried glances. Adelgo tried wiping her tears quickly, forcing a smile that refused to stay. I, I am fine, she said weakly. But her voice cracked like dry wood breaking. Memories rushed into her mind, carrying heavy water at dawn, being slapped for smiling, sleeping hungry, watching her father ignore her pain. The mask she had worn for years finally began breaking. She fell to her knees suddenly. The crowd gasped loudly. The chief's wife rushed forward immediately, followed by several elderly women. They surrounded Adago gently like mothers protecting a wounded child. My daughter, what is troubling your heart? One old woman asked softly. Adago shook her head, trying to remain silent. But silence had lived inside her for too long. Her chest rose sharply as she struggled to breathe through tears. For the first time in her life, she was standing before people who truly cared to listen. And deep inside, something told her she could not hide anymore. Behind the crowd, Mama Nkiru stood watching secretly, her face filled with anger and fear. She had not expected the performance to end like this. Beside her, Adelgo's father stood frozen, his eyes filled with confusion and shame. The entire village waited silently. Lantern flames flickered gently in the evening breeze. Drums remained quiet. Even the children stopped moving. All eyes rested on one girl kneeling in the center of the square, a girl known for laughter, now drowning in tears. Adelgo wiped her face slowly. Her lips trembled. She took a deep breath, preparing to speak words she had buried in her heart for years. And as she lifted her head to face the crowd, her voice finally broke free. For a long moment, Adelgo did not speak. She knelt in the middle of the village square, her hands trembling on her lap, tears dropping silently onto the dusty ground. The lantern lights flickered softly around her, as if even the fire was listening. The chief leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. My daughter, speak. Whatever you say today, this village will hear you. Adelgo swallowed hard. She lifted her head slowly and looked at the faces around her. Elders who had praised her jockeys, women who laughed at her performances, children who followed her everywhere. Her voice came out small at first. I make people laugh, but I don't laugh at home. A quiet murmur passed through the crowd. She took another deep breath. At home, laughter is a crime. Tears flowed freely now as her words gathered strength. I wake up before the sun every day. I fetch water, cook, clean, go to the farm. wash clothes, and still get beaten if I smile. Gasps filled the square. An elderly woman covered her mouth in shock. Adelgo continued, her voice shaking but steady. My stepmother says laughter makes me disrespectful. If I laugh, she slaps me. If I cry, she beats me more. She paused briefly, her eyes searching the crowd. My father sees everything. All eyes slowly turned toward the back of the crowd. He says nothing. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. The chief's wife wiped tears from her eyes. So this pain you carry it alone? She asked softly. Adelgo nodded. Sometimes I sleep hungry. Sometimes I cry until morning. But outside, I wear a smile because I don't want others to feel my pain. The women in the crowd began crying openly now. One shouted angrily, "A child is not a slave." Another added, "Is this why she always looks tired?" Suddenly, Mama Inkiro pushed forward angrily. "This girl is lying," she shouted. "She wants attention. She has always been stubborn and disrespectful." The crowd turned sharply toward her. The chief raised his staff and struck the ground. Silence. Mama Inkiro froze. The chief looked directly at her. "Is it a lie that you beat her for smiling?" Mama Nkiru hesitated. Before she could respond, a neighbor stepped forward. "I have held her cries many nights," the woman said boldly. Another woman joined. "I saw her slapped last market day." More voices rose. "She fetches water before dawn every day. She works more than grown women." Mama Nkiru's confidence collapsed slowly. The chief then turned to Adelgo's father. "Father of this child, step forward." The man walked forward slowly, his head bowed low. His legs trembled. "Is this how you protect your daughter?" the chief asked sternly. Tears filled the man's eyes. "I was afraid," he admitted quietly. "I didn't want trouble in my home." The elders murmured angrily. "One who fears trouble allows injustice," an elder said sharply. The chief stood up fully now, his voice powerful and final. "In Numokoro, a child is not punished for bringing joy to the people. A father who watches his child suffer commits the same offense as the one who beats her." He turned to Mama Nkiru. "From today, you will never raise your hand against this child again. If you do, the ancestors and this village will judge you." Mama Nkiru dropped to her knees immediately, fear written all over her face. "I am sorry," she whispered. The chief turned back to Adelgo. "My daughter, from today, you are no longer alone." The village women surrounded her, lifting her gently to her feet. They wrapped her in comforting arms like lost family finding her again. The crowd erupted into applause, not laughter this time, but respect. Adelgo cried openly, leaning into the arms of the women. For the first time in her life, she felt protected. Her father stepped forward shakily and knelt before her. I failed you, he said, tears streaming down his face. Forgive me, Adelgo looked at him quietly. She did not rush forgiveness, but she nodded slowly. That night, the festival continued. But something had changed. Laughter returned. Drums beat again. Masquerades danced. Yet this time, the village celebrated more than harvest. They celebrated truth. And in the center of it all stood one girl whose hidden pain had finally been seen. Adago looked around the village square, tears still glistening in her eyes. For the first time, she smiled, not to entertain anyone, but because her heart felt lighter. The morning after the New Yam festival felt different in Umokoro village. The sun rose gently, as if it did not want to disturb the peace that had settled overnight. Birds sang softly from tree to tree. Even the wind moved slowly, like it was respecting something new. Inside Adalgo's father's compound, silence filled the air. But this silence was not the heavy, fearful one Adalgo had known all her life. This one felt calm. Adalgo woke up and sat on her mat, confused. For the first time, nobody had shouted her name before dawn. No angry voice, no insults, no threats. She listened carefully. Nothing. Slowly, she stood up and stepped outside. Her father was already awake, sweeping the compound. Adelgo froze. She had never seen her father sweep before. When he noticed her, he stopped and looked at her with eyes filled with regret. "Good morning, my daughter," he said softly. The words alone almost made her cry. "Good morning, Papa," she replied quietly. He dropped the broom and cleared his throat. "Go and rest. I will finish the sweeping." Adelgo stood there, unsure whether to believe what she was hearing. Inside the kitchen, Mama Nkiru sat quietly on a wooden stool, pounding pepper slowly. When Adelgo entered, she tensed instinctively, preparing for shouting. But none came. Mama Nkiru avoided her eyes. After a long moment, she spoke. "I was wrong," she said stiffly. "From today, things will change." It was not a warm apology, but it was something, and for Adalgo, it was enough to breathe. Days passed, and slowly, life began to shift. Adelgo still helped at home, but no longer like a slave. Chores were shared, hunger disappeared, beatings stopped, laughter was no longer punished. Sometimes, when Adelgo laughed softly at home, Mama Nkiru would glance at her and look away, saying nothing. That silence felt like freedom. The village also changed toward Adelgo. Women visited her often, bringing food, wrappers, and kind words. Children followed her around even more than before. Elders greeted her respectfully. "She is strong," they said. "Not just funny." One afternoon, the chief sent for her. He sat beneath the ancient Iroko tree and spoke kindly. "My daughter, Your gift is bigger than jockeys. You heal hearts. Do not hide your voice again. Adelgo nodded, her eyes shining. She began performing again, but differently. Her jokes were still funny, but now they carried meaning. She spoke about kindness. She joked about wicked stepmothers and silent fathers. She made people laugh and think. Sometimes, while performing, she would pause and say, "Check on the people who make you laugh. They may be hiding tears." The village would grow quiet, then clap loudly. As time passed, Adago's name traveled beyond Omokoro. Nearby villages invited her for festivals and gatherings. She performed in markets, town halls, and celebrations. Each time she returned home, she returned to peace. One evening, as she sat outside watching the sunset, her father joined her. "I am proud of you," he said. Those words healed wounds years of silence had caused. Adago smiled gently. Years later, Adago stood before a large crowd in a distant village, now a respected storyteller and entertainer. She ended her performance the way she always did. The loudest laughter sometimes comes from the quietest pain, she said. "Be kind, listen, protect your children." The crowd rose in applause. That night, as she lay down to sleep, Adogo smiled to herself. Not because she had made others laugh, but because for the first time in her life, a smile came from peace. Sometimes, the people who make us laugh the most are fighting silent battles.